We have an abundance of microphones. Okay. Take it away, Iain. Okay. One of them has a switch at the bottom. Yeah.
Hello. Welcome everybody. So we're going to kick off with the first panel. So what I'm going to do first is ask the panelists just to give a little brief introduction of themselves. So we'll start off with Cedric.
Hi everyone, great pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Cedric. I'm the head of the Founder Institute in Hong Kong. It's an early stage startup incubator from the US, and also the head of 55, a data-driven marketing agency.
I'm Giancotti. I'm an angel investor and a founder of Bigcolors. I invest in startups. Got 15 under the umbrella. I'm hoping to increase that. And I'm based in Hong Kong.
Yes, I'm Gary Matuszak with KPMG. As Rebecca said, I lead our technology, media, and telecommunications practice globally. I'm actually here visiting. I reside in Silicon Valley, and I've been here for the week for all the Start Me Up Hong Kong events and some other things that we have going on this week.
Excellent, thanks, Jen. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Iain Reid. I'm a local entrepreneur. I run a fintech company. I'm also the founding president of TiEHK Hong Kong. So you've all got one of these on your chair. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a survey by KPMG, so what they've done is they've gone out and interviewed a whole bunch of people across the world, and what they've given us is the results of what all these people think are going to be disruptive technologies. It's very clear that cloud comes out as a winner. But it's not quite as clear. It's not quite as clear as that. So just wondered if the panelists could comment a little bit on what's happening in the cloud space.
Yeah, let me do that. And actually, maybe before I start, just to give a little bit more color on the survey itself. As you said, it's about 800 executives, and it's actually it's a fairly heavy concentration in Asia. About half of it's 15 countries, and about half of those are in Asia. With China being like 15%, so significant over here, and very high C-level executives. 70-some% are CEOs, and then another 10 or 15 are EVP type level. So it's a pretty senior audience. I think to your question in terms of what we saw when we looked at the purpose of the survey is to look at disruptive technology and where is innovation happening from all those things. And cloud and mobile came out as the two most disruptive technologies, but what was different is it came way down year over year. So it's not just another survey about cloud and mobile. Cloud actually came down from, I think, 30% a year ago to 14, and mobile came from 32 last year down to 9. And what we're looking and seeing is those have really gone from being disruptive to what I'm going to call more enabling. And they're really in the combination of those two, enabling sort of this next wave of technologies to come through. Things that we didn't really see a year or two ago, like 3D printing, biotech and healthcare applications, the whole area of Internet of Things and machine-to-machine communication. Those are the type of things that I think we're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years is really more disruptive as cloud, mobile, and even big data become more of a platform to help them.
So let's do a show of hands. Who uses cloud technology in the room? Actually, maybe I should say who doesn't use cloud technology in the room, and why not? Okay, interesting. So what I thought was also significant was that in the US, they think mobile is the most disruptive technology. And I just thought we'd ask the panelists whether they thought that was because mobile was leading the world or lagging Asia.
I think we all agree that the US is slightly lagging behind. Asia is far ahead in terms of usage, in terms of features, and of course China might be accused of copying some apps like WeChat. But when you look at what they did with WhatsApp, adding more features, they really made it much more exciting than what we can find in the West. That's just an example.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I mean, I think our general reaction to that part of the survey was that the U.S. is lagging, particularly at mobile, on the consumer side, what people are doing and using around mobile applications and mobile development. And so the fact that it's much lower in China, for example, it just means that I think this part of the world's been quite a ways ahead in a lot of different applications, including, you know, fintech and mobile, I think, which James was talking about before.
Disruption's already happened in Asia.
Disruption certainly has happened in Asia, and I just look locally about. I'm looking at. I wrote down when we were just at this meeting beforehand. The 4 strongest companies in Hong Kong, in my view, are all financial companies. One of them is actually speaking today, but when we talk about disruptive technologies in the fintech section, there's Bitcoin exchanges. Everyone's talking about cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of question marks of regulatory rules around that. Ask me the question. I haven't got the answer. You'll probably need to ask government officials about when there will be an answer on how Bitcoin plays out. But there's been crowd lending and then Bitcoin payments. So I just look at Ants BTC and WeLend and Big Game Labs, all doing exceptionally successful here in Hong Kong, who are taking new takes on payments, and particularly in Bitcoin and also in social lending as well. And then there's people like 8 Securities who are doing a different type of look at the stock market. So a lot of these ideas are new, like cryptocurrencies, and there's other ideas that have been around for quite some time, and they're changing. They're just making it easier. So when we talk about mobile payments and simplifying the traditional banks, something I've been used to overseas is how easy it is to transfer money from my Australian account or my US account. But here, if I use HSBC, and most of you probably do have a HSBC account here, my deepest apologies if I offend anyone from HSBC right now, but it's actually quite, I'd be very polite when I say it's not as user experience focused than it is, say, in Western countries. So, but that's changing, and that's the important thing. And what we're also seeing in places like Southeast Asia and in Africa, where mobile is first, we're seeing that mobile payments are becoming a huge attraction, and then there's data analytics, and so really, and data analytics in the fintech world, that is, there's been a real big push for fintech, particularly in the innovation that's happening in Asia, because, and of course in Middle East and Africa, because they're adapting mobile and adapting different technologies quicker than they are the other sides of the world.
What's interesting is that in some emerging countries, technology has enabled people to leapfrog traditional market developments. So let's say in India, for instance, I guess you don't have a lot of ATMs, but people are moving really fast to mobile payments.
Yeah, I think that there was a question in a survey about Bitcoin and stuff, and I thought if we expand that to be more mobile payments, mobile banking things, I think this is another area where clearly the U.S. is way behind what's happening and has been happening for 5+ years in many parts of Asia and many other emerging economies, where the U.S. is in many ways encumbered by the infrastructure that does exist, and so you're talking about just a matter of convenience, if you will. You just swipe a credit card or swipe your smartphone, so to speak. So it'll be a while, but I think it's interesting. There's been more discussion and buzz around digital payments, if you will, since Apple Pay has been announced than there was in the prior 2 years. So all of a sudden there's a lot more discussion and buzz about it.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, one of the other significant things I noticed was that in Japan, artificial intelligence appears to be something that certainly the Japanese are focusing on. I mean, it's quite a complicated area, but I just wondered whether the panelists had a view on what's going on in AI.
Yeah, I guess, and I was actually just in Tokyo, I guess 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think that in Japan, the 2 things. One is there's all of a sudden it's like Japan has woken up, and there's just a lot more innovation, or there's a lot more discussion of innovation going on in Japan. And we can all debate, how that'll happen, when it'll happen, if it'll happen. But clearly, the whole area of artificial intelligence, and they sort of wrap robotics into that, is an area where they believe, based upon their prior expertise in manufacturing, et cetera, that they have an advantage, and it's one that they're going to try to really push forward. And so I kind of combine AI along with robotics into that. And it's something that came through both on the consumer side and the enterprise side.
Okay. So, what's the downside? Well, what's going to be the barrier to all this disruption?
I think it comes down to people. At the end of the day, the people who work with technology, the people who implement it, the people who launch initiatives within most large groups or even smaller companies. But it's how you make people work together towards one single goal, which would be customer experience, basically. So people, and also how do you make room from legacy IT systems, especially in Asia, where you've got a lot of traditional brands and retailers who haven't invested much on their infrastructure because the business was so good. So now comes a time where suddenly you have to have those old systems communicate. So that might be the two biggest challenges that I see.
I think could go wrong, Gary?
Well, I think my perspective, and this came through in a lot of different places in the surveys, the single biggest barrier in consumer and enterprise side to enabling some of this disruptive technology has been security. That comes through as a major problem, and there's examples of it that exist all over the place, certainly in the U.S. and elsewhere. And really, and I don't know that the industry has an easy answer on how to solve that, but that's clearly the biggest drawback.
I also see a downfall. What I'm actually noticing, particularly in the last 6 months, is there's too much. As in, before there was WhatsApp, now there's WhatsApp, WeChat, Crux, Connect, and you name it. And there's so much just in the chat space for alone, Line, etc., that people are a bit overloaded. And so there will, in my view, there'll be a lot of consolidation in the next at least couple of years. And as a result, people who were initially thinking about going into building a particular type of technology may be holding back and trying to innovate in something new, or I go back to what Cedric's point was, is that we'll simplify things that are complicated. And that's something that I see a lot of disruption at. If we would have thought back 5 years ago what Uber have done or what Square have done, now it's now being part of common life, or the fact that I don't talk to people via the phone anymore, I WhatsApp them, is quite a, I would have never done that 5 years ago. I'm sorry if I've ever done that to anyone in the room, and I'm sure I've done that. But that's really the way the trends are going, and so our behaviour's changing based on technology, and it's the question is, are we ready for it? Are we going to accept it, or are we going to say no to it? And that's probably the question I can't answer at this point in time.
I think at that juncture, let's open it up to the audience. Any questions from the floor? Don't be shy.
What's the next big thing?
What's the next big thing?
Well, I tend to think that that I'm going to start really broad and then narrow it down. I think if you talk about the Internet of Things and machine to machine, I think one of the biggest areas of opportunity is all the healthcare applications. And it's the wearables, whether it's wearable or embedded, and what that can do, and what people can, the opportunity to change people's lives, if you will, through some of and the data and analytics all fit into it as well.
At last we had the Apple Watch. I've been waiting for that for years. It happened.
And where's that technology going to come from?
Everywhere, but it will be always have a magnet to Silicon Valley. So there'll be lots of innovation happening around the world, but of course Silicon Valley will still be a great place to innovate. We are seeing some trends around the world in lots of different places, particularly in Asia and health tech. That's become a very interesting space. Education technology has been exceptionally interesting, also in Asia. Asia are very big adopters of it. But the next big thing, I think it's education, payments, as in fintech, And also things, particularly in Asia, if you want to talk about the next big thing, is Asia doing things that they've been doing in the US and the Western world for quite some time. There's an example I'll use for two companies that are Hong Kong based, which when you think about it aren't really novel. The first one is Shopline, and all they're doing is building what Shopify do, but for Asia. They're doing a really good job of it. And then there's people like GoGoVan or an EasyVan who are doing Uber for logistics. And something like that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's working and it's working well. So these are things that when we talk about the next big thing, in my view, is just fixing the old things and making them better.
I think for me the next big thing is smart, data-driven personalization. I'm convinced that none of us will see the same version of a website in a few years to come.
I know we run out of time, but I'm just going to give a little takeaway. So I was at the ABCJ forum this week. There's now a Chinese mobile company that's being copied in the US. So the US have started copying China.
Yeah, this is definitely true. I've been writing about that trend for Forbes, the reverse copycat strategy.
So that's the future.
Yeah, it's one of the futures. Okay, we're going to give them a hand of